If anybody ever tells you about yourself, your pets, a loved one, that there's nothing more that can be done, nod your head, say thank you, and then go seek other answers because there's always other answers.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. I'm Dr. Megan Sprinkle. Have you ever faced a moment where you felt that you had run out of options and were powerless to help someone or something? For many, such experiences spark a profound drive to enter veterinary medicine, and sometimes they lead to a desire to explore new paths. This was the pivotal moment for our guest today, Dr. Marlene Siegel. Dr. Siegel, a 1985 graduate of the University of Florida College of Veterinary Medicine, was inspired to dive deeper into options in veterinary care following a life-threatening incident involving her daughter and a beloved family horse. This experience ignited her passion for learning and opened up a world of possibilities, not just for that horse, but for countless pets in the future. Today, Dr. Siegel is a proud owner of Pasco Veterinary Medical Center, where she blends traditional Western medicine with pioneering alternative approaches. Her innovative methods have made a significant impact for many pets and their families. Dr. Siegel's diverse career is full of inspiration, so let's get to the conversation with Dr. Marlene Siegel. When did you know you wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
Oh, I came out of the womb knowing. I didn't even play with dolls. I played with stuffed animals. I gathered lizards from our pool deck. I was just always fascinated and involved with animals.
Yeah. And then I read in a bio that is on your practice website that you were the first female paramedic in Florida. So it also sounds like you did some other things when it comes to medical to kind of get you ready maybe for vet medicine. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your journey before vet school, doing paramedic work and that area of your life?
So I graduated high school a year early. And so I had an extra year of being able to do other things. And a lot of my friends were well, at that time, they didn't call them paramedics. They were EMT 1s and EMT 2s. So a lot of my friends were in the fire department. They were EMT 2s. They worked on ambulance services, and I hung out with them a lot. But I couldn't ride on the vehicles unless I had my license. So I thought, all right, I have a year. Let me go ahead and do that. So I went to school, and they didn't check my age, which was very interesting because I had to do it at a college. And so I got into the technical school and I was able to get my EMT 1. And then at that point, I was ready to go to college. And when I went to the University of Florida, I applied for their local ambulance service, which was at that time a private company, but we worked out of the different fire stations and such. And so I got the job. And that made me an EMT 1. And I also worked at an emergency room in a little town about an hour north. And then they asked if I would become an EMT 2, and they paid for all my training. So I said, sure. So I became an EMT 2, which is now what we consider a paramedic. And then I worked all the way through my undergraduate years. So I worked 24 hours on, 48 hours off, except for if I had a shift at the other emergency clinic, then I would work 24, another 24, and then I would have a day off. The part that I didn't do so good was making it to classes. I was working a lot of hours. And by the time I made it through my 4th year and I was ready to apply for veterinary school, I'd not made the dean's list very much. I was on academic probation. So the counselor at the veterinary school said, okay, I love the fact that you can work 2 jobs, go to school and still not fail, but we need to see that you can actually do the job. And so I had to quit all my extra jobs and I went straight to school and I made the dean's list every quarter after that. So very fortunate that I was able to make it into veterinary school because that's the only thing in the world I could imagine really wanting to do as a full-time career. So I was very blessed. I got in.
Well, other than teaching you how to work really hard and probably some medical skills, was there anything else that you still remember from that experience that may have helped you going on into the future?
Oh, absolutely. The ability to triage was phenomenal. And my ability to think quick and think on the run, because, when you're working in an emergency situation, you have to really be able to think fast. And so that was really neat, to be able to take my knowledge base and then be able to quickly make decisions and triage situations and then be creative because you don't always have everything that you need, but you still have to figure out how to have a resolution. So I think that was instrumental in helping me to do histories and to do great physical exams and really to assess a situation very rapidly and then be able to be comfortable under a duress condition. Because doing emergency work, there's a lot of things coming at you very quickly. It's life and death, and being able to have the resilience to withstand that. It's not for everybody, but I really love the challenge. And even throughout my entire career, I've always done emergency work. So I've done daytime work and emergency work my entire career.
And the comment about sometimes you don't have all of the resources at your disposal, and the need to be creative, I think, is also going to come back into your story. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's also an important note. One, I think it's common for veterinarians to have to be creative, but especially in your story. And so when you went into vet school, did you have an idea of what you might do as a veterinarian after school? And did that change over the 4 years?
Well, my whole family thought I was going to go into equine practice, and I had a few uncles that were in the cattle farming, and so they were really hoping I was going to be a cattle veterinarian. But within the first year, what I realized was my passion was internal medicine. And I never wanted to be stuck inside of an office. I used to think that was the most horrible thing. Can I really get up every day and be indoors all day long? And I think it's ironic that after COVID, we had to go curbside the time of COVID. And because of lack of staff, we are still curbside. So I actually get to go outside for the past 3 or 4 years. I do a lot of my clinics outside and I love it. It's not for everybody, but I really enjoy being outside. So that answered the first part of your question. I realized it was internal medicine that I was really good at. And I think it's the combination of my intuitive skills and being very spiritually connected. Didn't know that at the time because you just know who you are. But even on the ambulance service when I was working, it was uncanny how often I knew the answer really quickly. And then when I started doing veterinary medicine, I found that that was another really good skill of mine. I was able to quickly come to answers and conclusions and go right in for the diagnosis and then the treatment. So I quickly realized that it was internal medicine that was my greatest passion. And so I ended up doing small animal work. But I have horses. I just get to
Yeah.
ride.
Which also comes up in just a second. But I wanted to talk about, you mentioned that since the start, you've been working in emergency. And so right out of school, you went to work for a 5-doctor practice that was small animal and exotics. And it sounded like fairly quickly you were already accepting some leadership roles. So you were starting to really rise up into the practice. And did that also seem to come naturally? What were you learning about leading and management when it came to having that role in the veterinary practice?
Well, that was an interesting start because I had a daytime position in the clinic, but I also was the emergency veterinarian. And my boss was supposed to be available by phone if something came in that I couldn't handle. He wasn't available very much, but he kind of threw me to the technicians, and they were a tough group. I'm not saying all technicians are like this, but they were a tough group. And I was the kid on the block. They had no respect for me, and they gave me a really hard time. It was rather miserable if I allowed it to be. But then the lead tech's dog got sick, and it was an autoimmune hemolytic anemia case, and she was very, very sick. And I was the one that slept on the floor with that dog 24/7. And it really changed our relationship. At that point, I had gained respect. They realized I was in it for the long haul. I was in it for the right reasons, and I had talent. So with all of that put together, it in a light switch changed our relationship. And from then on, I was well respected and I was able to take on more responsibilities. And I don't know if I would call it a leadership role as much there, but I spent a good year and a half there and it was a wonderful experience. Saw a ton of cases. In that time period, I was still 100% allopathic though. I had not merged into anything of the woo-woo side. And then after I left there, I went and ran an emergency clinic in another town where I did daytime relief work. And then I was doing the emergency work at night, which was so easy for me because I just love doing emergency work. And all that time, I knew I was preparing for opening my own practice. So I was just storing up a good amount of money. And when I did my daytime relief work, I was really paying attention to how a lot of the practices were run. How much staff did they have? What was their software system? How did they communicate to clients? What was their scheduling? What were their different platforms that they used for business management? How did they do staff meetings? Just every aspect of business, I was consuming that information. Things I liked, I marked I was going to go ahead and incorporate that in the things I did. And things that I thought needed improvement, I just noted that was not the best way to do it, and I wasn't going to do it that way. So I think I really shortened my learning curve by being in so many different practices doing relief work while I was getting prepared to open my own practice.
I have heard that feedback also from relief veterinarians is that you get to see so many different ways of practicing and doing business and
Yeah.
even internally just how people work. And so you learn a lot about what works and what doesn't, and you're able to observe a lot really fast. So you were thinking about starting your own practice. So once you finally made the leap to start your own practice, what were your feelings? What happened?
Yeah. I think my mom was the only one that was concerned. I am just a go get her done girl, and I don't have a lot of fear. I have pretty much no fear of failure. So I just go in there, and I thank my dad for that. He always said the only failure is not trying. But if you don't try, you can't succeed. So you have to at least make a good effort. And, he taught me make sure that you know what your strengths are, but you also have to know your weaknesses. So of course, my number one weakness at that time was it was me, myself, and I didn't even have any employees. So, you're starting out on a shoestring and then you have to make it work. And then during the end of my first year of practice, I was also very passionate about weightlifting and health for people. And I opened a human gym, which was probably insane to think of at the time. But I had a gentleman that I was friends with, and he said, come on, let's open this gym and it'll be really close to your office and it's going to be great. So we ended up opening Body Masters. It was awesome. We had a great logo. It was in a shopping center. We had so many people that enjoyed going there. But my partner that I had hired had a cocaine problem, which I didn't know. So a cash business and everything was going up his nose. So about a year later, I ended up closing that down to stop the ebb and flow of expenses. And again, I still never considered it a failure because I met a ton of people. They became clients at the veterinary hospital. I certainly learned that if you're going to open a business, make sure you can run it by yourself, because otherwise you're at the mercy of the people that you have there. And, if you aren't able to really monitor well, it could turn into a disaster like mine did. But it really was a great experience, and I still relish the memories of it. And I still have some of the equipment.
And I love how interested you are not only in pet health, but personal and human health as well. But also, as we're talking about starting your own businesses, you had mentioned to me in an earlier conversation that you have some people in your family who are big business people. Did you learn anything from them about running a business also when you were getting started?
My dad was a big influence on a business side because he was in business, and I certainly worked for him when I was younger. So I paid a lot of attention. My cousins were all multi gazillionaires, but we really didn't talk about business per se with them. And they also didn't really have much of a spiritual side, which I thought was interesting. And I wouldn't have called it spiritual at that time. But the whole idea that when you're doing something, you're doing it for the greater good, or you're part of a bigger plan. It was that concept. So I didn't really call it spiritual. I just had it in my heart that what I was doing was helping others. And that seemed to be a big theme for me. Like, I want to make sure that the people I'm around are doing well, whether it's their pets, whether it's them. I truly had a caring for how everybody was doing. And that's where you notice that I don't practice human medicine whatsoever, but I do want to be an influencer on people's health.
The word that comes to mind is purpose driven. And I think people in our industry can very much relate to doing business in a purpose driven fashion. And you had mentioned earlier that when you were doing emergency earlier on, you had not gotten close to the woo-woo side of things. So I would love for you to share your story about really when you started to find alternative ways of medicine with an incident with your daughter. So do you mind sharing that story?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Well, I'd been in practice already a good solid 10, almost 15 years. and so busy. We had a really busy practice. My husband at the time was not a veterinarian, but he helped run the office. And I had two girls that I was homeschooling because each of them was on a different spectrum of education. One needed more help and the other one was brilliant, and neither one were having their needs met in school. And I just felt like all my time was occupied fighting for each of them. And I thought, you know what, if it's going to be this much work, I might as well homeschool. And I looked at myself after I said that and I thought, did I actually say that? I have no skill as a teacher. What was I thinking? But I pulled them out of school, and our very first day of homeschooling, I said, hey guys, do you want to go horseback riding? Because my horses were at the office. And they said, sure. So we saddle up and we take off. And when we got back, we wrote a poem about our trip. And I had some science for them. We studied the weather and the clouds and the foliage around us. And so I thought it was a great day. And they got to decorate their books, their homeschool books for art. And then the next day I had a cancellation. I said, you guys want to go ride again? And they both unanimously at the same time said, are we going to have to write about it? And it was realized that for them, learning was not fun. Learning was a chore, and we don't mix fun with chores. So that was like a big eye opener for me. And then I wanted them to be very versatile. So we got into horseback riding. Obviously, I had horses, but then we got into horse showing as well. And the incident that we had shared was that my youngest daughter was in the arena riding her horse, and something happened. When they came back into lineup, the trainer was standing in front of my daughter and their horse. She's 10 years old, so they call it a walk trot class. And the trainers in front of their riders, God forbid something were to happen. Well, the God forbid happened in front of us. So Lily, the horse, started to have something happen to her neck. And you could see it from the arena. You could see her, she was like twitching her head, but it became very strong. And the trainer reached her hand up she thought maybe it was the forelock was tickling her ears. So she reached her hand up to move it. And then the horse reared in the air. The spasm was so intense that when the trainer reached her hand up, it caused Lily to do this. And the pain was so intense, she just reared right straight up into the air. The number one cause of a rider's death is a horse crushing them when they fall over like that. So in this flow motion nightmare, I see the horse go in the air. No one taught my 10-year-old that if your horse rears, just bail off, let go of everything and just bail to safety. And so she's literally hanging from the reins, literally drawing this horse over backwards. She's going to inevitably fall on my daughter. During that fraction that you're watching, I see the horse squat down on her left hind leg, and as hard as she could, she pushed herself to the right. My daughter was starting to slide off the saddle to the left. It's an English saddle, so there's nothing to hold on to. That's why she was holding onto the reins. And so when the horse actually hit the ground, the thud reverberated through the entire arena. It was sickening. There wasn't a sound from anybody. Everybody was holding their breath because they were fearful of the worst. I jumped over the railing and I was literally running to my daughter. When I got there, the horse had already caught her breath and was back standing, but my daughter wasn't moving. So I got there, she opened her eyes and I said, are you okay? And by the grace of God, she was fine, only hurt her pride. But that wasn't the end of the story, because back home, there were a few more incidences. And one of them, I was standing right next to the horse and I saw what looked like a seizure. It just went up her leg, up her neck, and just contorted her. So I had equine vets come out and look at her, and they said, we don't know exactly what's wrong, but we can tell you she's not safe to ride, because she'd done this 3 times while a rider was on her. Not safe to ride. You can put her out to a pasture or you can put her down. And it was those words that triggered something inside of me that was so profound. First of all, I was not willing to accept that as reality. And so that's first point I want to make. If anybody ever tells you about yourself, your pets, a loved one, that there's nothing more that can be done, nod your head, say thank you, and then go seek other answers, because there's always other answers. So my commitment, because this horse not only was a U.S. national champion, she was a Canadian national champion in open divisions, an amazing athlete. But that horse saved my daughter's life. And I was going to fix that horse because this little team was best friends. The horse would literally put her head on my daughter's shoulder at the end of a class, and they would walk out together from the riding arena. It was absolutely adorable. So I was going to fix that horse. And that took me into integrative medicine. And it was one thing after another after another. And each thing that I learned, I thought, oh, I could apply that to my small animal practice. And so I just kept incorporating things. But the impetus for the drive was I was never going to face somebody and say, there's nothing more that I can do. So I was making sure that my toolkit was as big as it could be. And to this very day, I'm adding 2 more modalities to my practice this week. We're starting to do cold plunging for animals with osteoarthritis and with cancer, and using checkpoint inhibitors with photobiomodulation and photodynamic therapy, which have just not been done in the animal industry. But I'm going to figure it out. We're going to make it work, and we're going to teach it to all the veterinarians and the pet parents.
I have heard of cold plunging for people, but never in animals. So that'll be interesting to learn more. And for us who have no idea what we're talking about, we can dive more into some of these other alternatives that you have found. And because I think everyone has had a moment where you hate that feeling of there's nothing more that you can do. Yeah. And I think with people that are drawn to this profession, back to that purpose-driven, we really want to do everything we can do. And we are going to be faced with some challenges, but to be able to, like you said, have this ginormous toolkit that we can bring, I think is a huge part of not only being able to serve the animals that we care about and their pet owners, but also to take care of ourselves. I think a lot of burnout also comes from that feeling of there's nothing more that I can do.
Absolutely.
So I just want to, again, confirm how important that I think this moment is, and your very quick realization that we're going to figure out what to do. So what was kind of your first step, I guess, probably with your own horse? What were your first steps to figuring out, no, we got to widen our options here?
So my first phone call was to my personal chiropractor, who ironically had taken a veterinary chiropractic course a couple years earlier. And he said, "Oh, doc, you got to do this. It's amazing." And I literally my hand up in front of his face and said, "Dan, I cannot do one more thing in my life. I was homeschooling girls, running a busy 10-person practice. And at that time, my spouse was like a third child. So, I just had my plate full. And then a couple years comes and the universe goes, oh, no. It's time for you to step across the line and really come into your full power and be all that you came here to be. And literally, that's what it was. It was the push to do better for Lily, the horse, and to be able to incorporate that into my practice. So the first thing was my chiropractor. He came out and he was doing a particular technique that uses an activator gun. This horse was so painful. He had it on the lowest setting. And when he touched her neck, she literally jumped to the other side of the stall. Well, I knew he wasn't going to travel the circuit with me. We were getting ready to leave for our national circuits. And I thought, okay, what do I got to do? So I called the person who did the training for veterinarians. And I said, would you train me as I'm traveling? And he said, yes. So, but I had to agree that when I got back, I would take his full course, which I did. So I started out with chiropractic, and then I went into acupuncture, and then it was herbs and nutrition. And then it just kept snowballing from there. I was a sponge. And there was nothing in the veterinary industry, by the way, that gave me a background except for acupuncture and herbs. That was it. And that was an icing on the cake. That was not my main ability to really make a difference in these horses. And so I started learning from the human functional medicine side. So anytime there was a webinar or a meeting, and I would literally reach out to the speakers and then say, hey, I'm a veterinarian. I know you don't treat animals, but tell me how you do people. I will learn how to extrapolate it to animals. And that's literally how I did item by item.
Wow. And how was that received? Did you have interesting reactions when people heard you were a veterinarian and interested in bringing it to animal health?
Yeah, they they go, well, that's really cool. The practitioners were cool, but they just didn't know how to advise me. But they thought that was really neat. It was my clients that were the best. So the very first client that came in with an animal that needed a chiropractic adjustment based on the history, I was so nervous to bring this up. And I finally got it out, told him what I think needed to happen. And he goes, oh, I love that. I take my children to a functional medicine doctor. So this is wonderful. And that's all I needed. The very first person that assured me this was okay. And then I started, as I interviewed more people and I asked questions about what owners are looking for, because I think that's a really important thing that we need to ask our owners is, what are they expecting from us? What are the outcomes that they want? That is a major part of my success because I listened to what they wanted. I didn't just vomit back out what I wanted them to do because I thought it was amazing. I really listened to them. And as I listened, I was realizing that more and more people are looking for an integrative approach. More and more people are tired of a pill for the ill, a diet for the disease, and another relapse. They want their pets to be healthier. And they're realizing in this world of very complex diseases, nothing like I had 40 years ago. Today's world of complex diseases is really challenging. And we can't solve problems with the same mindset that created them. Thank you, Albert Einstein. He also said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that's why so many veterinarians are having burnout and they are frustrated and they are leaving the industry. They went into it because they wanted to help animals. They wanted to serve. They wanted to see their work actually make a difference. But when you're in a world now where your toolkit is steroids and antibiotics, chemotherapy and surgery, and it doesn't fix the problem, it's very frustrating and it's very discouraging. So I see why the problem is there, but I've been so blessed for the past 25 years to be able to do that integrative medicine. It's actually called bioregulatory medicine, which means that I really have learned the biology of the body, the biochemical pathways, the mechanisms for how the body works, and then figuring out what's missing, what's toxic, how do you fix it by working within the body's biology. It's amazing. So that has inspired me to where, here I am almost 70 years old, practicing for 40 years and more excited and more passionate and more energetic now than I was my first 5 years of practice because I'm seeing the payoff. I'm seeing that I am making a difference. I am seeing animals that are recovering. A majority of the animals that come to my practice, the parents have been told there's nothing more that you can do. Euthanasia is your next option. And these people were like me, no, I'm going to go find other answers. So I see that as a trend. I see more and more people that are seeking answers and they're not just accepting the norm. They want a different paradigm, which is beautiful. That's what we're here for.
And that's so encouraging to hear that. I'm fortunate enough to interview some people who say that is that, they've been in practice for a while and now is the most exciting time of being in veterinary medicine. And so the other thing that I really wanted to highlight too, because I think this is so crucial, and I think it's a human thing. So it's not just vet med, but the fact that you ask and listen to the pet parents about what they're looking for, their expectations, what they want is so crucial. I think we kind of go into situations and assuming things.
Mm-hmm.
And it just in life in general, again, I think this is human things, love being surprised. I love just asking and being curious because I think that is the best way, not only to figure out probably a better or the best strategy to help a pet and the pet parent, but also to build that relationship with the pet parent. And I would imagine that especially, again, this is an assumption, so feel free to add here, is that if people were that open to alternative approaches for their pet, that would have just grown over time because I just see a lot of trends in the priority of health. And especially as the pet gets a very special role in our families, that they want to do all they can for the pet. And adding on one more and is that in a time of financial constraints where the economy is tight and we all are really feeling it, no matter where you are, I think, in society, all the more reasons to be very open to all of the different tools that are available. What are your thoughts so far, kind of watching time go over and hearing what pet parents are looking for?
Whenever I interview parents and I'm trying to find out what they're looking for, many of them want their pets to live forever. Okay. But they know that's not realistic. And then when you cut through that, what are they really looking for? Quality of life. And they don't want to feel guilty. They don't want to feel like it's their fault and they missed something. They don't want to go back and realize that because of their ignorance, they created the harm. And so therefore, they've shortened their pet's life. Nobody that I know really wants their pets to suffer. They don't. So when we can teach them know better, do better, right? It's as simple as that. And I help people to understand that I'm meeting them where they're at. Like none of us knew a lot of this information 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago. This is all evolving and it's changing with the time. So if somebody's out there listening to this conversation and they're feeling bad because they didn't know better, don't feel bad. Go learn. Learn what else you can do. Learn how you can live differently. And you made a really important comment in the beginning because it's not just about our pets. It's not just about ourselves. It's about our families. It's about our friends. And it's about Mother Earth. So our behaviors are not affecting just our little small circle. It's affecting the world globally. Doesn't seem like that, but if you're using a lot of chemicals and pesticides and a lot of toxins, that's going into the environment and that can go into the water system that will affect land up to 300 miles away. And so you really are affecting the planet. We all want our planet to be here. We want our children to have a planet later on. So we have to start thinking more about sustainability. What does that look like? We can't just live in a consumptive world, which is what we have been taught. Fast, cheap, convenient, consumable, throw it in the garbage. It's plastic. You can recycle it. No, we really have to start reconnecting back to our morals, our values, our core principles. Many people don't even know what those are. They don't even know why they're here on planet Earth. So as we start to reconnect, and our animals, I think, are the guides that help us to go there, because people will do things for their animals that they wouldn't do for themselves. So as I'm taking them through the journey of how do we actually help this animal live a longer, healthier life, the very first thing they have to learn to do is stop doing the things that are causing the disease. Oh, that sounds pretty intuitive, right? But yet they're not thinking about it. It's not being a bad pet parent. It's just not having conscious awareness. And that's really one of my big pushes, is just helping people to have conscious awareness. And we could really change the entire world if we, the people, got together and just made buying decisions. If we chose how to spend our dollars, then it would be literally a matter of days and weeks before industry would pivot and meet our demands. It's simple as that. I call belief systems BS. If I refer to BS, I'm referring to belief systems. And so people think that it's unaffordable, it's unattainable, but it's not. Because when you look at how much money they spend when the animal gets sick, it's thousands and thousands of dollars where they could have taken that money and put it towards health care. What does that look like? And that's supporting the body in all the body functions. And if we did health care, we wouldn't have the problems. At my age, I haven't had health insurance since I gave birth to my last child, which I was 30. So for the next 40 years, I did not have health care. I didn't want it because I didn't need it. Now, I had accident insurance. If I broke my arm or I was in an accident, I had that covered, but not health care. And it wasn't until I had to get Medicare, you're forced to get Medicare, that I actually had to go back into the system. So moral of story, we need to take the power back, the power to heal. As my friend Robert Scott Bell says, power to heal is ours. And we've just given our power away. We have to go back to learning what makes help. We have to start having some critical thinking skills. If you're looking at a package that can last on the shelf for 30 plus years, do you really think there's any nutrition left in it? I don't think so. So why would we eat that? Why would we feed it to our animals?
Yeah. And I really appreciated when you were talking about talking and working with the pet owner that it sounds like you're very careful and prioritize not bringing shame into the situation. Cause I think that's a big challenge that we need to overcome too in our profession. It is not using that as a tactic to teach. You mentioned you own a raw food company. I know there's a supplement company in there. You've been teaching courses for parents and for veterinarians, which, by the way, we'll make sure to link and provide all of those resources for people. But also, you started to talk about holistic approach, and I know that word is kind of tainted, but you're talking about the earth and personal well-being, all on top of taking care of our animals. And you mentioned earlier that you wouldn't have used the term spiritual when you were getting started. So when did that vocabulary and that understanding in yourself and desire to want to include all of these aspects of things? I know, like when you say, I'm going to go get a salad, it means go to your garden and actually collect the salad. So how did that change and become such a big part of your career, but also your life as well?
I haven't told this story before, so it's very interesting. I had already had my first child, and I found myself having massive anxiety over having my child in somebody else's car. I had these living nightmares of the car flipping over into a ditch, and I'm the one trying to pull everybody out of their car seats and save everybody, and just a lot of angst. I couldn't get on an airplane. I couldn't fly with my children for fear that I was out of control. And I was introduced to a woman who does neurolinguistic training. And as it turned out, she was very spiritual. And so she helped me to understand what part of my psyche was causing me to be on more alert, to be more careful and aware of my surroundings. She taught me how to ground. I literally became a tree hugger. You would literally go and hug my oak tree and ground myself and do breathing exercises. And then she really started opening up my awareness of how intuitive I was. And she would say things like, well, don't you find it interesting that blah, blah, blah would happen to you? And it was like this woman was sitting in my office and watching me work because she knew the things that were happening to me. Animal experiences, people experiences. People would say things to me and then they would go, wow, I've never told anybody that before. And I just was bringing out something in them. And so she helped me to realize what that healing nature. In fact, she said, you came here to be a healer. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm a vet. I didn't even pick up on the fact that a healer is a much bigger spiritual realm than just being a vet. So that was kind of the opening. And then from there, I started being more aware, learning more, taking courses. I've taken lots of training in mediumship, in animal communication, and I already had those skills, but I wanted to understand how to harness it better so that it wasn't just random, that I could actually use it in a more intentional way.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that the Marlene that was going through vet school would never have imagined where you are today?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think that's part of the journey. That's part of the fun is that if somebody's starting out, whatever your career is, just be open to receiving. When something comes across your path and it catches your attention and it feels good, explore that. I call it being aware of resistance and flow. This is how I would actually help my clients as well, is when you're in flow, everything just happens easy peasy. It's synchronicity. It just falls into place. But when you are in resistance, it's the universe, God, whatever you want to call your higher consciousness, giving you an assistance to let you know you're a little off path. If it's a lot of resistance, like it knocks you down and takes your breath away, then you are really going down a different path and you need to turn around and go a different way. But sometimes the resistance is just minor. It's like it gets a little bumpy on the road and then you know you're off path. It's being aware of that. It's starting to train yourself to realize that, first of all, nothing happens by accident. It really doesn't. Number two, you're creating everything in your universe. I can't make it any more simple than that. And once we realize that it's our choice on how we perceive our life, you can be a victim and you're going to always be a victim because that's how you perceive your life to be. So things are always going to happen to you. Or you can learn how to be the victor of your life and realize that you have a lot of support from the universe around you, many loved ones that are helping you to be successful and learn and grow and expand. So which way do you want to be a victim or do you want to be a victor? So for me, I even pay attention to the most little things. I mean, something like this would bother most people in business. I have 1-star reviews and 5-star reviews. There's almost nothing in between. And the 1-star reviews are almost always people who are angry, shamers, blamers. They're bitter with their life. They're bitter with themselves. They want to put their problems onto somebody else as if they were the problem that caused it to them, right? So it's interesting. I look at those and it helps me to see the contrast. I don't take it personal because the people that want to work with me are going to see past the anger, the shame, the blame, and they're going to want to work with somebody who is going to help them to grow and expand and not create blame and shame in their lives, because that's not what Earth School is all about. It's all about the journey, the fun, the growing, the learning. Would we want to play a puzzle that had 3 pieces in it? How boring. We want to have challenge in our world, and we want to be able to, like you just said, I can look back now at my age and see all the way past into my beginnings and go, wow, I wouldn't have expected it, but I see how it happened. I see the little things that kept happening that were encouraging me along those pathways. And I didn't have a family that was spiritual. So I had no idea that I even had those skills, but it was stuff like I knew when my uncle got sick. I saw it. I saw the whole experience. And I called my mom and I said, check on Uncle Mac because I think something is wrong. He hadn't even been diagnosed. It would be 2 more weeks before he was diagnosed, but I saw everything. And then as a paramedic, we went out to a call and where the police are there and it was an old man and he's in, we have to go into his house, into his bedroom and he's under the sheets. And all of a sudden I said, he has a shotgun under the sheets. And my partner looked at me and I said, he has a shotgun under the sheets. Nobody could see that, but I knew it was there. And so I had to grab the police officer and I said, there's a shotgun under the sheet. I don't know what the guy was intending on doing, but his hands were under the sheets and they were on the shotgun. So the police went over there, they pulled it back and there was a shotgun. So how would I have known that, right? And it was all those little things. I would know when a car was going to run a red light and I would slow down. I'm driving an ambulance with the lights going, but somehow I knew my intuition, my instincts, my guides, I don't know, but I would slow down and my partner would say, what are you doing? 2 seconds later, a car runs the red light and we would have been smashed. It was stuff like that that happened to me all the time. So when I met the neurolinguistics lady and she starts bringing up, haven't you noticed that you have these experiences? And I'm shocked. Like, were you with me? But never did know that. And that kind of opened me up. And then again, a circumstance would happen. I would get an email that I would look at, or I would meet somebody and they would open up another avenue of exploration. And, anytime I hear something 2 or 3 times, I go, oh, I guess I have to learn about that. So that's how I flow. I just am very open to expanding. I truly am open to the consciousness and expansion, and I draw myself towards people that will help me with that. And I draw people towards me that want that kind of service.
Mm. And I think that's so empowering too. to also be open and expansive. And yes, it's okay that you don't make everybody happy. You don't want to work with everybody. You want to work with the people that allow you to do that expansion of yourself. And while not everyone might be quite as intuitive as you, the effort to put into being more self-aware is so important. It allows you to understand more about yourself and which way to lean into to explore more so that you are able to empower yourself and find something that is where you can say, I've never been so excited to be where I am is because you're listening to that.
I have a slide on one of my slides on my presentations on my closing is it basically says, don't be afraid to disappoint those who don't get you. It's okay, right? They're going to get a 1-star review, and that's okay. It just helps you to really understand who is the right person that you need to work with. It's not that person. And it means that sometimes we have to step out of the box. And it's okay. It's actually a lot more fun when you're willing to step out of the box. Life becomes so much more delicious, so much more sexy when you don't have to fit into a norm and you can not be afraid that somebody's going to judge you. And that's what makes the world such a fun place to be. Gosh, if everybody was the same, how boring would that be? Right. So that contrast is a beautiful example for us to focus even more on the things that we want, the things that we want to experience, the person that we want to be. And then you clearly see what you don't want to be. And that's all beautiful.
And I think when everybody does that for themselves, it actually creates a stronger, more diverse, more exciting profession because everybody is leaning into their strengths and their interests and they're offering, but back to the expanding the toolkit, right? I think that allows the whole profession to do that so that it can be a healthier profession. We're really able to serve everyone. As we were saying, everybody's going to have a preference. You talked about curbside at the beginning, and I just went to AVMA conference, and someone had mentioned, why don't people do more curbside? It's exactly what I want. I just want to drive up, drop my dog off, read a book, and then have them come back. So understanding, your audience, we can really serve, there's so many pet parents and they are so different. And being able to offer that those expansive options for them, I think is, again, it's good for them. It's good for us as we're leaning into what allows us to be expansive and empowered.
And the whole idea of curbside, I think a lot of people don't understand that, at least the way we do it, the only time that pet parent is separated from their pet is when we're drawing blood and taking x-rays. We would have done that inside anyway. They're not back there when I'm doing surgery. They're not back there when I'm taking x-rays. So all the rest of the time, I'm outside with them. We're sitting on these beautiful benches with hummingbirds coming around because I've got a little mini forest in front of the office. And so we're sitting out there watching hummingbirds and butterflies and bees and just this lizards and such. And it's beautiful. It's so much more relaxed. The animals are more relaxed. I spend more time with each client now sitting outside, making sure all their concerns and questions are answered. And we have so much more beautiful bonding time than we did when we were in a room with 15-minute appointments. It is so much nicer. And we spend more time with our clients. There's much more communication. It's much more one-on-one. It's really no difference. It's much nicer.
I love just, you're giving so many examples of different ways that we can rethink things. And again, I think that is beautiful as the world evolves. We're learning more, as we'll probably learn more about nutrition and learn more about diagnostics and ways we can treat animals. Just be open to all these new ways. And so I want to thank you so much for that. I'm very inspired. And I know we're running out of time. So I want to, before I do my final few questions, I wanted to open it up for you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the veterinary profession?
Yeah. I want to help shatter old belief systems so that we can have a paradigm shift and have new belief systems, ones that serve us. And the way we're going to do that is through leaving the traditional box, not leaving behind our tools in that box. They are fabulous and they are necessary. We want those things, but we need to be able to bring back critical thinking. We need to expand our toolkit. We need to restore the love and passion we have for our industry so that we do what we came here to do. We came here to be healers of pets. And I want every veterinarian to be able to experience that again, the joy, the heart expansion. It is incredible. And I have courses for veterinarians. I even teach the spiritual side. I teach them how to connect with that so that ultimately gives them the experience that they really came here to have.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. And like I said, I will take all the links and resources that you have and make sure that those are in our show notes and descriptions for everyone. So to wrap it up, just some fun final few questions. And I am very excited to hear your answers to some of these. So one of the questions I always ask is there something on your bucket list that you would like to do?
Oh my gosh. Is there something on my bucket list? I want to open spas, family wellness centers, which are my detox centers for pets and parents. And on that bucket list is being able to travel to all the centers and encourage the franchise owners how to be part of transforming vet medicine. I do not want to jump out of absolutely good flying airplanes. So it is not on my bucket list. And God, I travel the world. I don't know that there's anything that is so pressing that I haven't done. I live in a food forest. I love expanding that, but I don't really feel like there's something that's missing. So I would say just my bucket list is going deeper on the things that I have that I love. And that would be transforming vet medicine and inspiring people to help Mother Earth by planting things that they can eat and learning how to use plants as medicine. That's really a big passion of mine, and helping the worms and helping the bees. And yeah, if they go on to my, I think it's on my Instagram and YouTube page. We post Food Forest Friday. And then I also have an herbalist friend of mine, and she and I geek out about all this stuff. And she's an herbalist, so of course she's been doing it a long time. And so we are showing people how to make vinegars and how to make tinctures and how to make medicine and balms. And it's so much fun. So I think just expanding on that would be the conclusion of my bucket list.
It's a good place to be. Good to hear. And is there a skill or interest that maybe not a lot of people know that you have?
Skill or interest? Well, I think I pretty much said it. I have a passion for growing food and cultivating the land and, of course, my animals, needless to say. And I never thought I would ever be a speaker. That was shocking, but here I am. You really overcome some of your limiting beliefs. One other thing about me, yeah, I think my spiritual side. I love doing mediumship work. I love channeling. I love being an inspiration. But I kind of wear that out here. So I think people see
Not
it.
secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. And finally, what is something you are very grateful for?
I am grateful literally to be on this planet, to serve the people that I serve. I start my day in gratitude. I do gratitude throughout the day, and I end my day in gratitude. I think gratitude is the number one frequency that aids us in longevity, bar none. So I am grateful for the salad I picked today. I'm grateful that I met you. I'm grateful for this opportunity to meet and connect with other people. I'm already grateful that I know so many people are going to reach out and connect with me, whether it's on social media or it's part of our programs. I'm just really grateful for everything that happens, even the ouchy things in my life. I am grateful for them. I'm grateful for the 1-star reviews. I'm grateful for some of the biggest conflicts that I've had in life, because all of it helped me to be who I am today. And I appreciate that.
I hope you enjoyed this fascinating veterinary story. We can make an impact in so many places. Check out the show notes for lots of resources. Please make sure you are subscribed on your podcast app, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and follow me on LinkedIn, where I hang out the most. You can contact me on LinkedIn, on the website at vetlifereimagined.com, and brand new is that you can text me. To send me a text message, find the link at the top of the show notes below that says, send us a text message. I want to thank our longtime sponsors, Fire Consulting and Will Hughes, who support the podcast over on our hosting platform, Buzzsprout. You can support the podcast too. Just check out the show notes for a link. And I hope to see you next time on Vet Life Reimagined.